Okay. We're going to start our second part. Roland is going to be, that's Roland Rance, is going to be speaking on Water Plus, and Mehmed Aksoy is going to be speaking of who is the person who is the editor of TheKurdishQuestion.com, is going to be speaking on the struggles around water and oil and in Rojava. Yes. So, we're starting with Roland.
Okay, what I'm speaking about is not specifically the crisis of fresh water, but I'll explain as we go through. Where generally we think of the conflict in Palestine as a question of settler colonialism. And that's the framework in which I'll be addressing this. But I think it's important actually partly to reframe or to think of the way in which we frame the conflict. Because Alan made a point earlier, which he regularly makes, about biodiversity, about the disappearance of species. And I think it's relevant in the context of Palestine. I think it's important to remember that what happened in 1948 with the establishment of Israel on the ruins of Palestine was also the elimination of a culture, millennia-old culture. That we saw the expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians, we saw the destruction of 500 villages. We also saw the disappearance of an entire culture, an entire civilization. We also saw the disappearance of a bit later to one of them, we saw the disappearance of several subcultures and sub-ethnic groups and sub-civilizations within that. But I think it's important to remember, as Alan said, these unintended, unexpected consequences of the disappearance of species. The disappearance of a civilization and culture doesn't have the same direct dramatic impact, or the same butterfly wing impact on human society. But it's still a major loss. It's something that cannot be recreated. Even if we see the return of Palestinians to Palestine, we're never going to recreate the Palestinian society that was uprooted in 1948. So, the first ecological impact of the establishment of the State of Israel was the elimination of a culture, and I think that needs to be remembered. Now, even beyond that, no, stop again. Even those who are aware of the destruction of Palestinian society, of the huge devastation that has been caused by Zionism, have been prey, I think, to some of the myths that Zionism has told about itself, some of the stories it's woven around itself. And sorry, before I come to that, before I come specifically to water, I want to make a point about the general ecological impact. John Coble, who wrote the Eco-Socialist Manifesto, also wrote this book, Overcoming Zionism, Creating a Single Democratic State in Israel-Palestine. And he goes into some of the devastating environmental impact of Israeli society. He points out, for instance, that all of Israel's rivers are seriously polluted except for the Upper Jordan. Some have been polluted to literally lethal levels. The Lower Jordan is little more than a drainage ditch for polluted runoff. 88% of Tel Aviv's wells contain persistent organic pollutants. As for the air, a quadrupling of nitrous oxide emissions has been observed since 1980. Asthma rates among children have gone from 5.6% in 1980 to 11.2% in 1989 and 17% in 2002. Israel has one of the highest breast cancer incidences in the world, with a 32% increase in the 1990s. In the 1970s, the breast milk of Israeli women contained some 800 times the concentration of benzene hexachloride as in American women, etc., etc. Israel is an extremely polluted society, ecologically polluted, environmentally polluted. And one of the worst examples of this is what has happened with water in Israel. Now, among the myths that Zionism tells them about itself, that I think have been accepted even by many people who support Palestinian rights and oppose Zionism. Many of these relate to water. In the course of researching this, I came across a book, Pollution in a Promised Land, about Israel's environmental policy. And the author points out that the almost mythical nature of water for Zionism and the Jewish religion, that water is mentioned over 500 times in the Bible. There are several different words, as it's probably myth, but as it's said that Eskimo have several words for snow. There are several different words in Hebrew for different types of water, a different word for the first rain of the season and the last rain of the season, for different types of drought, for different types of storm. In that environmental society, water has assumed huge, vast mythical proportions. And the myths that Zionists tell that I think have been widely swallowed include the allegation that they made the desert bloom and that they drained the swamps. And that many people say, well, yeah, it's terrible that they expel the Palestinians, it's terrible that they go to war with neighbours, but at least look what they made the desert bloom. They drained the swamps. These, in fact, have been ecological nightmares. I think we need to say a little bit about I'll come to it in detail in a second. I think we need to say a little bit about the actual water resources in Israel. Israel exploits some 95% of the available water resources. It's the highest exploitation rate in the world. The available water resources are, which each have their own ecological and some of them have their own geopolitical problems, are a coastal aquifer, a mountain aquifer, and the River Jordan. The coastal aquifer is very, very liable to salinification. If they over pump the water, sea water goes in. Apparently, the coastal aquifer can be flushed. I always understood that if the well was salinified, this was the end. But apparently, for geological reasons, the coastal aquifer can be reflushed with fresh water, but it has been fully exploited and they cannot take any more water out of it. The mountain aquifer is the watershed that runs through the middle of the West Bank, where most of the water drains from that into Israel. And since 1967, since the occupation of the West Bank, Israel has almost completely prevented the drilling of wells by Palestinians because they're exploiting the water that's running off from the West Bank, and one of the sources of conflict there is actually control of wells. On the River Jordan, I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. But these, even when we get to the direct ecological impact of these have been the cause also of wars and geopolitical conflicts. One of the background causes of the 1967 war, the so-called Six-Day War, was Israel's need to control the headwaters of the River Jordan. All through the 1950s, there were skirmishes between Israel, Jordan and Syria over diversion of the Jordan, attempts to use it for irrigation in Jordan, attempts to use it in Syria, and Israel several times conducting raids or bombing to prevent the construction of dams and the diversion of the water. In 1967, Israel basically seized control of nearly all of the springs and all of the water that flows into the Jordan. It still didn't provide enough. In 1982, they tried to seize control of the Litani River in south of Lebanon, and there were reports of Israeli water engineers actually seen there trying to create dams and divert the water into Israel. That didn't happen because basically Israel was defeated in south of Lebanon. So the need for water has caused geopolitical conflicts. But it's also that over-exploitation of the water has caused major environmental problems. Making the desert bloom, what Israel wanted to do was to settle immigrants in unsettled areas as
one means of maintaining their control of the region, particularly in the south of Israel. The north of Israel is slightly in the north of Israel there's far more water than in the south, in the Negev desert. Now they wanted to settle people there, and they wanted to create industry. What are people going to do? We're bringing these settlers over, largely these were people who brought over from North Africa as well. We're going to settle them there. We've got to provide industry for them. Somebody came up with this bright idea that cotton, after all in Egypt they produce cotton, so we can produce cotton. Now of course cotton in Egypt is a product of the Nile, the flooding of the Nile. Cotton demands huge amounts. It takes apparently 1,000 cubic meters of water to produce 1 ton of cotton. To create a cotton industry in Israel, they needed to divert huge flows of water from largely from the River Jordan to the Negev desert. Now, I mean, we've seen these pictures of making the desert bloom, but what they've done is they've created oases where people are employed in factories that have no real ecological basis, no ecological legitimacy, at the expense of diverting huge amounts of water from the River Jordan, which is now being turned into a muddy trickle. What we've seen is the salinification of the Lake Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. We've seen the drying up of the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is now really two large lakes that are constantly reducing. It already was saline, but it's now not in any real sense a sea at all. And we've seen virtually no water flowing through the River Jordan at all. Draining the swamps, the other myth they tell themselves. In the north of Israel, there was water north of Lake Galilee, the Sea of Galilee. There was the Hula Swamp. It was an area of mosquitoes. It was not a particularly healthy area. It was also an environmentally very, very rich area. The huge project of the state of Israel in its early years was draining the swamp. We can turn this into arable land, and they did. They drained the swamps. They found it had completely devastating, unexpected ecological consequences. For a start, they found that there wasn't arable land at all. They couldn't establish any settlements there. Beyond this, what the effect was of draining the swamp was the swamp had been nutrient built up. When they drained the swamps, nutrients flowed more and more into the Sea of Galilee, increasing the salinity level, increasing the organic level, wiping out species in the sea. What it caused was Israel had been, the whole area had been a major staging post for migratory birds. This lake was one of the richest wildlife areas probably one of the most diverse bird areas in the world before the 1950s. Draining the swamps, their great victory, basically removed the birds altogether. So migratory birds. I don't know if anybody actually done any research on the effect on migratory birds and how it's affected the viability of some bird species, but certainly there was no longer a staging post in their migration from the seasonal migration from Africa to the north and back. Draining the swamps exposed what they hadn't realised was that most of the land under the swamps was peat. Draining the swamps exposed huge areas of peat, dried them out, and in fact what they created was vast peat fires that lasted decades because they drained the swamps. So this great ecological victory, this great environmental victory of Zionism turned out to be such an ecological disaster, although they don't really write about it much now, the new big project is reflooding the swamps and recreating the swamps that they had said that they were eliminating. Overexploitation of the water has led to, as Cockle says, the rivers turning into muddy streams. It's worse than turning into muddy streams. Some of you may remember in, I think, 1994, the Maccabi Games, Israel's equivalent of the Olympic Games. Athletes going into the stadium, walking over a bridge, which collapsed under their weight. It collapsed because it was built by corrupt builders and whatever. The bridge collapsed. 4 athletes died and several were seriously ill. The athletes who died, one of them was crushed by the bridge. The other 3 were poisoned. And it took months to... And many other people, world-class athletes, were poisoned for life, had their, were disabled for life and had their careers ruined because of it. They couldn't even work out. There was such a pollutant stew in this river. Organophosphates and chemical runoff and sludge and probably nuclear waste. Nobody really knows, nobody really discovered. So the Kishon River, the further north river in the Haifa area, another vast, massively polluted river in Israel. The reason they discovered this was it was the area that the army used, or the Navy used, to train naval frogmen. And suddenly in the 90s it was discovered a vast number of them were suffering unexpected, unidentified diseases. And they discovered again this was caused by the pollution of the river, caused by overexploitation, caused by chemical runoff, caused by the river running dry, a lot of the water being drained off, the flow of the water slowing. And again, they couldn't really identify what was the cause, but it meant that they had to stop for an untold period training frogmen because there was no safe place for them to do it. What we've seen, there was what I've been looking for, and I can't find, that is the destruction of the coral reef in the Red Sea coral reef in Eilat. I mean, it has apparently disappeared, but nobody seems to have done much research on this that I could discover. But basically, the upshot of this is that, as well as being a political disaster, as well as being a cultural disaster, the establishment of the State of Israel, the way in which it was run, and particularly the way in which it's run for the benefit of just one part of the community and one part of the country, has been an ecological nightmare. What it's also shown, to me what it's also shown, is yet more evidence that the ecology of Palestine is so interlinked. There is no way that this crisis can be addressed through a repartition of Palestine. There's no way either for Israel or for a future Palestinian state that the shortage of water, that the environmental devastation caused by Zionism can be addressed just in those frameworks. I mean, ultimately, and as I'm sure we're also from Mehmet about Kurdistan and the problems with the diversion of the Euphrates, is that these crises, these overexploitation of water and the environmental crisis and political crisis that they cause, can't be addressed within the framework of any single state. And again raise this whole question for ecological reasons as well as for political reasons of returning to our whole analysis of the need for a socialist federation in the Middle East.